You don't understand. I had never had this connection with someone before.
Lois and Clark, the most iconic couple in comic book history. But by the time Smallville hit our screens, their love story had already been told 100 times. The challenge? How do you make something so familiar feel brand new? Smallville found the answer by showing us that their bond wasn't about destiny, but about choice. Today, we're breaking down why their love still works and why it remains one of TV's most timeless romances. From Superman, the animated series, to Lois and Clark, the new adventures of Superman, audiences had already seen their relationship blossom in countless forms. That posed a massive challenge for Smallville. How do you take one of the most familiar romances in television history and make it feel fresh, compelling, and necessary? The answer came in restraint. Rather than rush Clark and Lois together, Smallville chose to play the long game. When Lois first appeared in Season 4, she wasn't introduced as Clark's love interest at all. In fact, she was positioned as more of a foil, sarcastic, intrusive, and quick to challenge him at every turn. By keeping the romance on the back burner, the writers gave fans something unexpected: a slow burn, rooted in character development rather than instant attraction. This decision was crucial. Instead of relying on the built-in nostalgia of Lois and Clark, Smallville rebuilt the relationship from the ground up. Audiences got to see their bond evolve from reluctant allies to friends to partners, and finally to something deeper. By the time love entered the picture, it felt earned. Fans weren't just watching history repeat itself, they were watching history grow. Another smart move was the contrast with Lana Lang, Clark's first great love in the series. Lana represented Clark's ties to Smallville, his longing for normalcy, and the safe, familiar life he could have had. By the time Lois arrived, the audience already knew what Clark's past looked like. Introducing Lois as his future meant her character didn't just repeat old beats, she redefined them. In doing so, Smallville reminded fans why Lois and Clark's relationship had stood the test of time in the first place. It wasn't simply about Superman's girlfriend. It was about two equals whose lives intersected in ways that shaped both their futures. Lois wasn't just another love interest, she was an entirely different type of partner. And by pacing their relationship carefully, the show gave their eventual romance the weight and impact it deserved. In short, Smallville didn't ignore the legacy of Lois and Clark. It honored it by daring to retell it in a way that felt both familiar and brand new. For the first 3 seasons of Smallville, Lana Lang was Clark's dream. She was the girl next door, the symbol of his desire for normalcy, and the anchor to his human side. With Lana, Clark imagined a life untouched by destiny, quiet, safe, and grounded in the everyday. But as much as that love was real, it was also rooted in what Clark wanted to be, not who he was becoming. When Lois Lane arrived, the entire dynamic shifted. Lois wasn't interested in protecting Clark's sense of normalcy, she was more interested in challenging it. Where Lana often tried to shield Clark or soften his struggles, Lois confronted him head-on. She asked the hard questions. She poked holes in his excuses. She didn't let him retreat into comfort zones. In other words, Lois wasn't the girl who made Clark feel safe. She was the woman who pushed him to grow. This contrast was vital. Lana represented Clark's past, the life he could have had if he'd stayed the boy from Smallville. Lois represented his future, the ambition, honesty, and drive that would define Superman. Fans often debate Lana versus Lois, but the truth is, the show used both women to highlight Clark's evolution. With Lana, we saw Clark's longing for simplicity. With Lois, we saw his acceptance of responsibility. And importantly, Lois didn't fall in love with Clark the way Lana did. Lana loved Clark deeply, but their relationship was often haunted by secrets and half-truths. Lois, on the other hand, fell for Clark without ever knowing about his powers. That alone made her love different. It was about him, not what he could do. She valued his honesty, his stubbornness, and his heart long before she learned about Krypton. In this way, Lois became more than a love interest. She was Clark's mirror, someone who saw him clearly, without the fog of destiny or the weight of secrecy. And for Clark, who had spent so much of his life hiding, that clarity was revolutionary. By contrasting Lana with Lois, Smallville gave depth to Clark's romantic journey. It wasn't about choosing between two women, it was about choosing between two versions of himself. Lana symbolized the boy who wanted to belong. Lois symbolized the man who was ready to lead. And that's why their love story resonated. It wasn't just about romance, it was about Clark embracing who he was meant to be. One of the most important reasons Lois and Clark's love story still works is because Lois fell for Clark long before she knew about Superman. She didn't need the cape, the powers, or the legend. She loved the awkward farm boy who tripped over his words, who cared too much, and who always put others before himself. That distinction is critical because it separates Lois from nearly every other relationship in Clark's life. With Lana, secrets always stood between them. Clark wanted to protect her, but in doing so, he created a wall. Their love was real, but it was often fragile, built on what couldn't be said. With Lois, that wall didn't exist. She didn't fall in love with a fantasy version of Clark, she fell for the real one, flaws and all. That gave their relationship a foundation of honesty long before Clark shared his secret. And when she finally did learn the truth, it didn't change her love, it deepened it. Lois didn't suddenly see Clark as someone greater than he already was. She had always believed in him, always trusted him, always challenged him to step up. The powers didn't make her love stronger. They simply revealed the full extent of the man she already adored. This is why Lois and Clark feel timeless. Their love wasn't based on spectacle, it was based on humanity. Superman might inspire the world, but for Lois, Clark Kent was always enough. While it's easy to focus on how Lois shaped Clark into Superman, the truth is that Clark also changed Lois in profound ways. When she first entered Smallville, Lois was brash, sarcastic, and fiercely guarded. She used wit and bravado as armor, keeping people at a distance to avoid vulnerability. Clark slowly broke through that exterior, not by overwhelming her, but by consistently showing up with kindness, patience, and quiet strength. Through Clark, Lois learned that letting her guard down didn't mean weakness. Vulnerability became a source of connection, rather than something to fear. She discovered that trust wasn't a risk to avoid. It was a gift to be shared. Clark's unwavering belief in her worth helped Lois realize she didn't always need to go it alone. This transformation wasn't one-sided. Just as Lois pushed Clark to embrace his destiny, Clark helped Lois embrace her heart. He reminded her that strength wasn't just about independence. It was also about allowing someone in. Their love story thrived on balance. She taught him ambition and honesty, and he taught her trust and vulnerability. In the end, Clark didn't just find a partner in Lois, he helped her become the best version of herself, just as she did for him. What truly set Lois and Clark apart in Smallville was that their partnership wasn't confined to romance. It extended into every part of their lives. At the Daily Planet, they were equals. Lois was never a damsel waiting to be saved. She was an investigative bulldog, chasing leads with the same determination Clark showed in protecting people. Their dynamic in the newsroom mirrored their relationship outside it. Sharp banter, mutual respect, and an unshakable sense of teamwork. Unlike other relationships in Clark's past, Lois never tried to hold him back. She challenged him, but she also stood by his side when it mattered most. She wasn't afraid of the danger that came with loving someone destined for greatness. Instead, she embraced it, because she understood her own role in the story. Superman might have saved the world, but Lois Lane kept him grounded, reminding him that his humanity mattered just as much as his heroism. Together, they weren't just lovers, they were partners in truth. Clark sought to save lives physically, while Lois sought to reveal truths that saved lives in their own way. Their combined purpose made them unstoppable, proving their bond was more than romance. It was a foundation for everything they would become. At its core, The reason Lois and Clark's love story continues to resonate is because it feels real, earned, and timeless. Unlike many TV romances that rely on destiny or cliché, theirs was built on choice. Clark didn't choose Lois because fate dictated it. He chose her because she made him better. And Lois didn't choose Clark because he was Superman. She chose him because he was the man she trusted with her heart. Their relationship worked because it balanced myth and humanity. Clark is a near god in power, but Lois never let him forget the man beneath the cape. She challenged him when he doubted himself, teased him when he took life too seriously, and stood firm when the world threatened to overwhelm him. At the same time, Clark gave Lois someone who saw through her walls, someone who believed in her as much as she believed in him. Lois and Clark weren't just a love story, they were the love story. One built on trust, challenge, and choice. But what do you think? Is their romance the greatest in superhero TV history? Or do you think another couple deserves that crown? Drop your thoughts in the comments, hit like if you believe in true partnership, and subscribe for more Smallville deep dives. Thanks for watching.